In this video, I wanted to show you how to create the if function and the CountIf function. For our if function, we want to determine the number of overtime hours that a person will be paid. Now remember that in order to determine a person's overtime hours, it's any hours that are over 40. And then those hours that are over 40 need to be multiplied by 1.5. This is a great example to introduce the if function. So I'm going to start with my first employee here in cell E5, and I'm going to open up the formula bar, go to Formulas, Logical, and If. Remember, the if function is a logical function. The first argument in a function, in the if function, is a logical test. I'm going to test to see if the first employee's hours worked are less than 40. Actually, less than or equal to 40. If the function is if the people have worked less than or equal to 40, then they have no overtime. So if that answer is true, they're going to be paid 0 overtime hours. If the answer is false, meaning they worked more than 40 hours, I'm going to take the hours that they work and subtract it from 40. I'm going to need to put parentheses around that because that's the math I want to do first. And then I'm going to multiply the difference between those two values by 1.5. When I click OK, this first person, I get 0 overtime hours, and that makes sense because this person only worked 32 hours, which is less than or equal to 40, so he had 0 overtime. If I now copy this formula down, and recall when you want to copy a formula down, you place your mouse on the bottom right-hand corner of the cell. The mouse changes to a black cross, which becomes Excel's fill handle, and you double-click. Now, if we just scroll down and look at the very first person that does have overtime hours, let's check to make sure the formula is accurate. First of all, we're going to check to see if the value in D8, which is 44, is less than or equal to 40. That is false. It's more than 40. So it's going to, remember, skip to the second comma, and it's going to take those 44 hours minus the 40 to give you 4 overtime hours, and then we're going to multiply that times 1.5. So this person, Mike, will be paid 6 additional overtime hours. So now that we have the if function working, I'm going to come up to D2, and now I want to count up the number of employees who have worked overtime. You use the CountIf function for this. So I'm going to go More Functions, Statistical, because the CountIf function is a statistical function. There are 2 arguments for the CountIf. The first one is the range. Now, we could do this one of 2 ways, but the one way I'm going to do it is going to work for hours worked. So I'm going to click in the first cell of the range, D5, and I could take my mouse, white cross, and highlight the entire range. But a quick way to select an entire range is you click in the first range, then you hold Control, Shift, down arrow, and that will highlight the entire range that you're looking for. So we're going to count up all the values from the range D5 to D75, and the criteria we're going to use is going to be greater than 40. So any person who works more than 40 hours has worked overtime. If we click OK, it will return the answer that we have 25 employees who worked overtime this week. That is the if and CountIf function.